Morning, 7th grade. We are getting into a brand new unit. We are actually going to continue with, they call it geometry when we're talking about spatial geometric figures, and we've just finished composite figures, which is finding the area of trapezoids, of parallelograms, of rectangles, and triangles. But now what we're going to do is we're going to get into volume, and we're getting into 3 dimensions, okay? So what we're going to do today is talk about the volume, and today is 2/18/19, the volume of rectangular prisms. And we know just by its name, it's going to involve some rectangles. And I am on page 76, just making sure. Okay? All right. So you were given these are the 2 sheets that you're going to need today. This is an overview of what we're going to cover. I'm not going to do it all today. All we're going to concentrate today is the volume of a rectangular prism and talk about its parts, and then you have your independent work for today. Okay, so not a lot. So what I want to do is we are actually going to put this, some of you probably have smaller journals, so what you may need to do is fold that down and just kind of fold it up, and then you can open it as you need it. You can do it this way as well. Okay? Actually, we can do it this way too, if you want. But I am just going to glue this just like this, okay? So when we're working with volume, here we have a rectangular prism. Okay? Up until now, you've always learned, oh, I just multiply all these 3 numbers, right? 3 times 2 times 4. True, that is correct. But this year, what we are going to do is we are going to learn something called a big B. And if you notice, hold on, I'm catching up. Sorry. I was not as ready as I thought I would be. Oh, that was the wrong one. Okay. So on your reference sheet, you have volume right here. And so if you look at a prism, it doesn't say length times base, or base times length times height. Okay, it actually says big B. So what is the big B? Okay, when you get into 7th and 8th grade, to find the volume, it is big B times your height. So what we need to do is look at our parts. Okay, now on this rectangular prism, I have already shaded the base. Does the base have to be the bottom? Absolutely not. It's not always what it rests on. So for example, I could use this side as a base. But the point is recognizing you're always going to have 2 bases on a prism, and they are directly parallel to one another. So that means if I use the bottom, then the top is the top base. So if I use the right base, then the left base would be, so in other words, they're directly opposite. Okay? It's extremely important. So if this is my base, then this is my height of my prism. So just a strategy that I use, always shade your base and always draw a squiggly on the height of the prism, and the height of the prism is what connects your 2 bases. Okay? So what does that mean? So when you're working with volume, you need to find the area of your base. So what is big B? So what I like to do is draw your shape. Okay, and I have the dimensions 2 and a 3. Because the area of a rectangle is little b times your height, isn't it? Because I'm not working with volume when I'm finding area of a base. And so I find that it's a rectangle, and if you notice, the formula is the area is equal to base times height. That's right. 2, I'm sorry, I should have done that opposite. Should have been 3 times 2. I just reversed it. But in multiplication, remember that we can move those numbers around. So now that I found the area of the base, I am going to substitute it back in for my variable So my volume is equal to 6 times, and what is the height of my prism? That's right, it's located not directly over here, because all of these are the height, aren't they? Okay, and my height is 4. So my volume is equal to 6 times 4, which is 24. And I'm going to go ahead and add a unit of centimeters. So 24 centimeters, and when I'm working with volume, it is 3-dimensional. Okay? Always box your answer. So tomorrow, when you come to a lesson, we are actually going to work on pyramids. So really, this should be a review. And up until this year, you just multiply the 3 numbers. But the point of 7th grade is to recognize in your formula now that the big B is actually the area of the base. So I do want to see the strategy. I want to see you work with the prism on your left and the area of your base on the right. Okay, we worked with this on composite figures a little bit too. So let's walk through maybe 1 or 2 on the sheet right here. So I do want you to show your work on another sheet of paper. I know I hate it when they give you no workspace, but it does eliminate paper. All right. So the important part is to recognize your base. Okay, and remember that when we recognize the base, we actually shaded it. So the shading has already been done for you, and what I like about this is that it shows that it does not have to be, the base does not always need to be the bottom. So they have already shaded these for you. If you want to highlight, you can. If you find that extra work, it doesn't matter, right? So all of these are the base. So now I need to recognize, I'm going to do the first 3 with you, maybe the first 2. I need to recognize the height of each prism. So remember that if this is my base, then it is going to be the plane that is directly opposite. And so the height of a prism is whatever connects the 2 bases. Okay? So right here, what is my height? What is my height here? It's what connects, the height is what, it goes away from your base. Okay? All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to, on a separate sheet of paper, I'm going to do number 1. Let's do, okay. So the volume is going to be equal to base times the height, but I'm going to go off to the side and I'm going to find the area of the base, the big B. And my formula is little b times my height. And what I am going to do is I'm going to draw that rectangle. Now I need to look at the measurements. I know that the short side is going to be a 3. So what is my long side? It didn't directly, the measurement was not given to me directly, but I can use another part of a prism because I know that all of these are going to be the same. That's right, it's going to be 8. Okay, so my little b is 8 and my height is 3. Do not confuse. These are not the same thing. This is the height of your physical base, which is a rectangle, because we're dealing in area here. This is the height of the prism, which is for 3-dimensional. Okay? This is the height which leads away from the base. 2 completely different things. All right, so 8 times 3 is 24. Hi, Mr. Brock.
Hi, kids.
All right, so now I'm going to substitute my answer. I found my big B. I'm going to take it, I'm going to plop it in so I can take the big B out, and that's substitution. All right, you're plugging in a value that you have found. All right, do I know what my height is for the prism? Absolutely. It is 6. It's my little squiggly. It's what leads away from the base. Really, really important. All right, so I'm going to go off and do my little scratch over here. Right? We talked about that and why we do it. 6 times 4 is 24. Carry your 2. 6 times 2 is 12. plus 2 is 14, okay? And the beauty of this, and just a little bit of mental math, if you have 24 times 6, if you have two numbers, you can actually manipulate these into numbers that you do know. If you multiply one side by 2, but you divide by 2 by the other, 24 divided by 2 is 12. 6 times 2 is 12. Is that something that you know? That's right. 12 times 12 is 144. And we are working with the unit of a foot, and we are going to cube it because we are working with volume. All right, one more. Okay, let's work with, if you don't mind, I'm going to do number 3 because we have a different type of base. We're working with the top of the prism, okay? So I'm going to let you do number 2 on your own with the other 6. You don't have a lot, and please have this done when you walk in my class on Tuesday. Okay, so here we know what the formula is. B equals BH. We do not have to memorize that because they give it on this wonderful reference sheet, right? We're working with volume. So I need to always go over. I've already recognized my base with my highlighter, and I've recognized the height of my prism with the squiggly line. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my rectangle. And I like to do this because it reminds me that I'm working with a two-dimensional figure. I'm no longer working with a prism, a three-dimensional. So what are my units? If you notice, the yellow, the long side is 15. The short side is 7. That's right, because if this is 7, then this is 7. So the area equals base times height. And the reason that I knew to go get this is because I went to the area on my reference sheet, and if you notice, I looked up rectangle, and it is base times height. And remember, we are not going to confuse these two heights because they are completely different. So 15 times 7. Okay, what is 15 times 7?
57.
7 times 5 is 35. Mr. Brock should have known that because any number ending in 5 is always going to end up with a 5. So not always, right? If it's an even number. All right, so 5, carry a 3, 105. That is the area. So now I'm going to substitute it. And the height of my prism is my squiggly, which is 4. And this is an easy one. If you know that you have 100, I know that I'm going to have 400. 4 times 5 is 20. Okay? And you always double check, but just a little bit of mental math. And it's always going to be cubed. This is really simple, and all we're doing is we're continuing with what you learned in 6th grade and just taking it one step further. All right, so all of the rest is not a lot. You only have 6 problems plus this one right here, okay? And I do want you to cut this out, and I want you to put this directly on your page. You can, if you used a separate sheet of paper, that's fine. Some people like to take notes. Put it on the page after the foldable. I'm sorry. Even I got confused, didn't I? Okay, so this was right. In fact, go ahead and put this on this page. If you want to redraw, you can trace these so you have a visual, and that way you have the examples in your notebook. And I'm sorry I wasn't clear on that before I did it. But I will see you tomorrow, bright and early.